So my original intent in creating this in the first place was to try to get people to reach ways on what Republicans will hear.
Yeah,
so it's kind of the thing with
Yeah.
right-wing voters, and maybe some of us too, for all we know. So we'll see. The Republican voter is angry and frustrated and non-trusting, and they should be. They absolutely should be. They're lied to every day by the representatives they elect and by the people they listen to, and they're getting ripped off by the very people they're voting for. And my thing to them is, you should be angry. I don't blame you a bit for being angry, but you keep voting for the very people who are ripping us all off. And I don't think it can be overstated the role of the right-wing media machine, and it is a machine. Radio all day long, and Fox and Newsmax and whatever else they've got. They are bombarded with scapegoats for their life's problems. Democrats, liberals, immigrants, the welfare state, the media, of course. And new scapegoats get imagined all the time, depending on whatever problems come up. So now we have the deep state. We have Black history and LBGT, and now books and relevant stories that are scapegoats. I did not have this slide last time. These are major themes that I think you can walk away with, but I'm putting them right up front at the beginning in the hope that we can keep some of these words in mind through the presentation and they can register a little bit. But safety versus fear. Republicans are all about fear. They play into fear. So therefore, safety, the word safety, the concept safety, is a huge factor in Republican understanding, in right-wing understanding. Certainty versus doubt. One thing that religion, and forgive me, I'm secular, and maybe my biases will come through in an offensive way. I apologize up front for that. But religion gives people certainty. And Republican politics gives people certainty in a world where they do not like doubt. Science is all about doubt. So this is a huge concept that plays into politics and what people hear and want to hear. And then finally, judgment. Judgment is also, in my opinion, a huge factor in all of our lives. I mean, and I've got a punchline at the end of some research I did that it really goes to judgment. But I don't know about you guys, but we used to be a community where it was live and let live. We were all about live and let live. And most people seem to be perfectly okay with that. And there's been just a huge injection of judgment. And again, I think the right-wing media machine has pushed that a lot. I'd like to introduce you to a word study that I did in studying the right-wing media, and in what way was it different? Was there a way to show that it was actually different, and what were they doing and what? So here's a speech by Elizabeth Warren that you might remember when she was campaigning for her first term in the Senate.
There is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear. You moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for. Yep. You hired workers the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for.
And I thought it was very interesting how various media outlets reacted to that speech. So I thought, okay, let's separate the right from the left and see if there's differences. Now, how to make it into a quantitative study to remove whatever biases I'm bringing into it. So I decided to simply chart and count every word that was used in every one of these talks. So I have 5 quote-unquote mainstream to left media outlets, and you see Glenn Beck, Megyn Kelly, and Judge Napolitano from Fox News at the time. Again, this is 2011. React. And I simply counted every usage of every word from either side and compared the results And here is what I found. So this is the Senate campaign, left and right. So, all right, you may notice at the top, despite the fact that the left has 5 sources, the number of raw words just in total is actually more on the right.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just, yeah. I mean, they're a little more wordy. What you can make whatever judgment you can, but that's important to note when we get into these raw numbers. So, the mention of Scott Brown, who was Warren's opponent, 8-2. The state of Massachusetts, 17-8. And you see these results, and there's a pattern that starts to emerge. So the right really didn't talk all that much about the campaign. The names. Now this is the one that really is amazing to me. So taxes, sure, they love to talk about taxes, but the left talks about taxes as well. And you've got warfare, tax war, warrior, that's about even in the class. But here's the one that just absolutely shocked me, even me. So the left used the word middle. Of course, middle class tax, blah, 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 that's always an issue. Unbelievable to me. So how do you talk and reach the very people that you're ignoring? But look at this, the identification, just simply you, me, we, they, and then scapegoats.
Oh, wow.
Government 16-1, they, their, them 46-14. I mean, that's heavily dominant on the right.
Yeah. Code.
So that's how you reach the very people you're ignoring. Now, to be fair, I can't generalize this. This is one study of one speech, of one reaction, but I suspect that this pattern remains with us to this day. So this is how it comes out. So they always speak in generalities and assumptions, and when you run across these people, I encourage you got to do what looks good on you. You know, if you don't want confrontation, don't. But I try not to let these people get away with it. So they'll make some kind of generalized assumption, and the comeback is like, well, how? What's your source? How do you know that? Give me a specific example. I want details, and often the argument sputters when they are asked for details. It's that simple. Where did they get a specific statistic? Chances are it's a talking point from right-wing media. And a lot of times they won't want to give away their source because they know when they give away their source, it's going to be Fox News or something. And they know not to say that. So they rely on the audience believing these generalities and assumptions with little to no verification. And it's totally fair of any of us to call them on that. Tell me specifically why. Now, this media argument kind of is laughable. It's laughable. Don't let them get away with the media. All of these media outlets work completely independently. They have deeply rooted journalistic ethic and tradition. So it's like, okay, well, which one is corrupt? Which one are you talking about? What are they getting wrong?
They're all corrupt.
Specifically, well, they're not all corrupt. They do fly like, sparrows sometimes. And I mean, I thought the media in general was very unfair with Hillary in 2016. But that happens. But that doesn't mean they're not accurate. So, just a devil's advocate question. If somebody accuses the media, well, again, more specific. Who is getting it wrong? What are they getting wrong? Republicans do not run for anything, they run against things. One of the interesting things about a Sunday, so I turned in MSNBC just in time for, I think it was Jen Psaki or somebody, literally well, wait a minute, we have breaking news, and on comes the news. So now I'm switching back and forth from Fox to NBC to Fox to NBC. And right away, it was amazing that Fox came up. Somebody actually said, what did she know and when did she know it? Because they think this whole Biden health thing has been a secret thing. This has been a plan. It's a cover-up. And then they kept asserting on Sunday that, well, if he can't run, he shouldn't be president. He needs to step down. And they were demanding that he step down. And my posit for that is the fact that they want her in office so that they can run against her, to do some kind of foible, to make some kind of mistake, to make some kind of speech that they can then attack as an incumbent president. And right now they're a little bit caught off guard.
Yes.
So yeah, they run against things and they bring up stuff that happens to be politically convenient at the time. You know, what happened to their argument against the debt ceiling and the national debt and deficit spending? I mean, that'll come up again when it's politically convenient. But again, when you have somebody on street level, we're on street level.
Yeah.
How do you know that? What's your source? Terms that need to change, and again, this was pointed toward candidates more, but this is something that sort of drives me a little bit nuts by Democrats a little bit. Dollars versus outcomes. Again, we all are, but right wing especially, they're bombarded with deficit spending and the debt we're leaving to our children. And so when even Biden does this all the time, when he talks about the infrastructure bill in terms of, oh, we invested $3 trillion, don't say $3 trillion. Talk about the outcomes, not the money.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the outcomes. I can't, it just drives me nuts. Lives lost versus lives taken. This is a little petty, but I think there's something to be said that I don't think Trump minded when people were dying of COVID. I don't think a lot of right-wing people, they remember the pastoral life of less people, more space, all that kind of thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing when people die. But if you speak of it in terms of a life taken rather than a life lost, I may be wrong, but this is my intuitive feeling, they will hear that more effectively than lives lost. Speak of it in lives taken. All right. This is a big one. Government regulation versus minimum standards. Right-wing voters get harped on constantly about regulation. Big government regulation. It's thwarting the economy. It's thwarting jobs, blah, 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 blah. But we get minimum standards for air quality and water quality, architecture. I mean, how many times have we seen earthquakes and tornadoes in other countries that do not have a strong federal government? Therefore, they have far lower electrical standards and building standards, and they're devastated. When you think about hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and the frequency with which that hits, I mean, it's not like California has to deal with all three of them, or Oklahoma has to deal with all, but in total, the United States has to deal with a lot. But we withstand it, we come back, and I think a lot of it is because the minimum standards our government sets. The Environmental Protection Agency was established. Does anybody know what president signed that into law? Richard Nixon. So this is one to file away. So when anybody tells you that the Democratic Party has become the radical left, Richard Nixon signed the Environmental Protection Agency into law. You tell me which party has moved and how far.
Yeah. Well, same with Reagan signing the assault weapon.
Yeah, the Brady Bill.
Yeah, Brady Bill.
Right. So that's a good example of how far the right wing has fallen, if you will.
And that's what the
Food and drug, that protects us. You know, again, minimum standards. It's not about government regulation creating this ceiling, this communistic, socialistic, the dystopian ceiling. It's about minimum standards, raising everybody's quality of life. And that's what our government does for us. Here's my thing about abortion. In my opinion, of course, I'm a guy, but part of that is because I'm a guy maybe. If you make it an argument about privacy, it's a larger thing, and now you can bring men into the picture. Now you can talk about vasectomies, about contraceptives, male contraceptives, privacy. Privacy is a cherished value that we all hold dear that is being ripped away from women all over the country. And also, if the argument is about privacy, we're not forced to defend abortion. It's not like we're pro-abortion.
Right.
It's privacy.
Right.
It's none of your damn business what she and her doctor decide to do. And you know how I know that? Because it's none of my damn business. Period. And so it's everybody's individual prerogative to treat this as you will, especially as women. But I'm just saying that I think ultimately it's an issue of privacy, which everybody can relate to. We all know this. Their argument is, in my opinion, is not really about the baby. As soon as the second the baby's born, they could care less.
On your own.
No prenatal care, no school lunches. I think it's about controlling women
Exactly what it is.
and legislating sex. And I guarantee you some of these white Christian nationals would love to make extramarital sex illegal in some way, shape, or form. So Christian belief versus Christian living. So my first degree was social welfare. I wanted to work with kids. I worked with juvenile hall kids, runaway shelter, group home. That was my whole thing. I've taught loads of swimming lessons. I've coached, blah, blah, blah. I have not raised my own kids, but I sure as heck have helped raise a lot of other people's kids. But I'm not a churchgoer. I'm totally secular. I'm a little cynical, frankly. But anybody can relate to do unto others the golden rule. And so my question, I don't care what anybody else believes. You are free to believe, and faith in and of itself is an incredibly powerful tool. What it is you have faith in is your business. But why do you need me to have the same faith in what you do? If I can follow that rule, do I really have to believe the story in order for you to be comfortable with me? If you look up quotes by our founding fathers about their attitudes towards Christianity, I mean, they hated religion. They wanted no part of any Christian influence. They're still rolling in their graves from us adding the word God to the Pledge of Allegiance. They're still rolling in their graves for adding God to our coinage. We used to be e pluribus unum. Now we're in God we trust, which e pluribus unum is everybody become one, and it's the religion that split us up, ironically. IBM has a special application engine that crunches data. And this is all census data. So what you do is you put in, run left-handed people that were born in Katati that own red Chevrolets. As a ridiculous example. You put those into the machine, and they're going to give you every instance in a number. How many instances do all those three things come together? And if you get an asterisk by it, it means it's more than a coincidence that they are all together. Otherwise, it's just a coincidence. So what we have here is high school graduation rates for the previous years that I could find. So the columns are the high school, the very individual years. And what I found was in the census data, there was a religiosity scale or index that every state had a rating. And it's based on how many times you go to church a week, how many hours do you spend at church, how, whatever, there's a fervor index, let's say. So every state had a rating. And so what this is saying is that the numbers represent, if it's a negative, it's an inverse. But if it's a positive number, it's simply the percentage. These three categories are associated with high school graduation, with kids that graduate from high school. And if it's a negative number, it recognizes the fact that it's more than a coincidence that it's not associated with high school graduation. That there's something going on, that it's more than just a coincidence that states with high religiosity have lower rates or are inversely related to high school graduation rates. You'll see that the secular index is just a complete mirror image of the basic religiosity. The religious import is again addresses fervor. How important is your faith? How important is religion? There apparently were questions on the census addressing that. And there was again a rating with each state. So this is state level data. So I can't say that just because you live in a state with high religiosity, Oklahoma, just because you live there, you're more likely to have a high school dropout. Can't say that. But you do live in a community and a state that does, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to support high school graduation. Now, the machine does not put these in bold. I put them in bold so they're easier to see. The machine gives us the asterisks. That's how I was clued in to the fact that it just means that it's more than a coincidence that those are associated together or inversely associated. Now take a look at this. I was able to break it down by religion, kind of. So I could not find Muslim, and I could not find a breakdown of the Protestant religions. So you got Methodist and Baptist and I don't know whether Seventh-day Adventist, but there's Catholic, Jewish, Mormon. That if a state is high in its religious import, it's low in graduation rates. But interestingly enough, Catholic is totally normal. They graduate their kids just fine. So the fact that that's just all normal numbers, blah, 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 just means they're normal, Jewish and Catholic. So there's something to be said, the fact that Catholic, and this is a lesson to me, it's not just religion, it's something else that's going on. So with these two faiths, major faiths, they have reconciled with science. They have reconciled with the value of education. So you can see that the Protestant faiths, now I have to qualify this because I do not know, because I had somebody who was a Methodist in the last group I did this with. And so they took some offense at that, and can't blame them. But there's something in the category of Protestant religions that is dragging the entire category down. Now Mormon, this kind of surprised me. Mormon, normal. They graduate their kids in high school as much as anybody else. And then you have other Christian, again, a very negative correlation with high school graduation. And to me, this is fundamentalism. It's the fundamentalist aspects of... all right, this is higher education. This is college degree. So going across, you're just going year to year to year, higher degree, graduate degree. And again, breakdown by the same religious categories. So Catholic, very highly correlated with higher degrees. So there's huge value in education. Jewish, same thing, to an even more degree. Highly correlated with higher degrees. Protestant, negative, inversely correlated with higher degrees. That's not a surprise. Mormon, normal. That's kind of a surprise to me. And again, other Christian. So whatever's in that cocktail of Protestant Christian versus other Christian. And I'm sorry that I don't have a better breakdown so we know more specifically. But it's an interesting thing to compare. All right, now, here's just me fooling around. And there's a punchline to this that's going to end with our one of our keywords, judgment. And sure enough, states with high religiosity scales have high rates of teen pregnancy, and secular is just the opposite. All right, divorce rates. Looks like everybody gets divorced. All right, the next one is marijuana. Ready?
Yeah.
Neutral. Everybody smokes marijuana. I mean, at the same rate. The next one is illicit drug use.
Cocaine sharks.
Normal, some people do drugs, but it's at the same rate. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not. Cigarette smoking. neutral, same rate, everybody.
That's hard to believe.
Now,
I think that would go with class.
the next 4 is the punchline. It's the most fascinating thing I did in my entire graduate studies. It's a whole other degree, if you ask me. So the categories are life expectancy, white male, life expectancy, black male, life expectancy, white female, life expectancy, black female. And again, you're broken down by states that are highly religious versus secular. For white male life expectancy, they get a huge negative correlation with life expectancy in highly religious states.
Except for more.
Versus secular is positive. If you're in a state that's more secular, like California, in theory, you're gonna live longer. But that's fascinating. Here's for black men. Now, if you can't see it, it's the opposite. Black men who are in religious states live longer. They're correlated highly without coincidence. And then the secular scale is exactly opposite. Now let's go to white women.
Oh, we all died quick.
No, we all.
So basically the same as white men. White women, again, to a lesser extent, but they are in fact correlated beyond a coincidence inversely with life expectancy in states that have high rates of religiosity. And then black women, same pattern as their men. When they're in states that have high rates of religiosity, they are highly correlated beyond a coincidence with high rates of life expectancy. What that experience is doing for black men that is taking away from white men. Religious communities are taking away from the life expectancy of white men and women and giving to black men and women. To me, it's judgmentalism. It's judgment versus support. You were talking about support, absolutely accurate, but I have a feeling that is only existing in the black church, so to speak, versus the judgment that is happening in the white community. That's my interpretation of it. It's judgmentalism, and we again back to live and let live versus judgment. For some reason, we've come a long way away from live and let live. And judgmentalism, you can make an argument, is killing people. It's killing the very people who are doing the judging. The harsh reality, it gets to a point where we have to hold ourselves accountable, or voters in general. So right-wing voters are told they're holding people accountable, again, back to judgment. Welfare recipients, judgment. Immigrants, people that are making supposedly their life miserable. They're upholding family values and a halt to no radical social change. Lower taxes, smaller government, that whole story, less regulation. But again, you combat that with safety. More jobs, better economy. The harsh reality, what they are actually voting for. They're voting for dead school children. They're voting for raped 14-year-old girls forced to carry to term. It's just barbaric. Sorry, but women back to second-class citizens. Here's another safety factor. Because of tax cuts, they're going to get less police, less fire, less money for public schools, lower standards and more expensive school costs for parents. My parents, probably yours too, when we grew up, they never had to spend a dime for a school uniform, for a sports uniform, for a bus ride, for driver's ed, for a full-time school nurse, for ear and eye treatment. Never had to spend for school supplies other than individual stuff for their kids. Band instruments, band uniforms. I did that when I was in school. So there's a lot lower standards because of these tax cuts. To me, the most seductive yet harmful thing to the middle class are the two words tax cut. And whatever money we get, I remember getting an $800 check or whatever it was, to me that's hush money. That's to shut us up and not pay attention to what's really happening, which is these huge tax breaks for the banks and the 1%. And then you're voting for racism and discrimination and a wider chasm between the haves and have-nots. This is my personal opinion, but I'm throwing that out there. So teachers and my work as a counselor to try to address these juvenile hall kids, I was trying to turn tax takers into taxpayers. And that's a really solid argument for people arguing against social programs and money for public schools. Do you want to raise tax takers or taxpayers? And that's something that every right-wing voter will hear. So tax takers, hungry kids that are less focused, that are more apt to fail, that are going to turn to drugs and crime, and we know the statistics, and I don't have to tell you, it's less safe and less ability in our job force to compete in the global economy for sure. And a continuing heavier financial burden, having to pay for prisons that are incredibly expensive. Taxpayers, though, you have more successful children, more healthy population, less healthcare costs, saves money for everybody, higher school standards, better educated population, better able to compete in the world economy, more innovation, more progress, more fulfilled Fourth Amendment equal protection. Ask yourself, are you an evangelist or a scientist? A scientist collects all available evidence and then draws a conclusion from that evidence, and then has the courage to change that conclusion if some other bit of evidence does not support the original conclusion. That's what a scientist is. An evangelist has the answer first and then goes to look for evidence that supports that conclusion first. That's in the right-wing media, it's all evangelism. It has to be measurable and observable.
I agree.
And evolution is a fact, but you can't call it that because ultimately it's a theory. It's science being flexible and malleable. And if anybody, by the way, comes to you, evolution is just a theory, we'll just tell them, well, guess what? Gravity is just a theory too. So go up on the roof and clasp your hands and just fall off backwards and ask God to, help you, to catch you. Again, it cannot be overstated. They are bombarded every minute of every day in their car, on their radio at home, and on Fox News on TV. They're giving conclusions. So last slide. So here's another dichotomy. Which are you and where are your friends? Is it everybody out for themselves, or are we all in this together? When Republicans are fighting for their tax cuts, I remember hearing somebody literally say, don't pay attention to what these guys are getting. Pay attention to you and your family. Whenever I hear, you work for you and your family, to me that's code for stick to yourself so that I can get away with murder over here. The right wing wants everybody out for themselves because they know when everybody's out for themselves, they're going to get the massive amount of the goods. And everybody can, do with how they can, and they don't really care how people do. Or are we all in this together? We're only as good as our poorest, oldest, less supported people, and that makes the statement of who we are as a country more than anything else. So that's the philosophy. Which are you? Where are your friends? And then the last one is, do you need to manipulate or do you adapt? Can you adapt to the world around you, or do you need the world to adapt to you? And again, that's can be situational, but I see the right wing as totally manipulative and the left wing as totally adaptive. And that, I think, is it.
Do you have notes?